Quadcast Nation, we got a special episode today with my fellow eudaimonian. Can we call ourselves that? Eudaimonious?
I think it's what we met. We're allowed to call ourselves that, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Vince, well, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's good to see you again. It's been probably a month already. Actually, it feels like yesterday. Yeah.
It does feel like yesterday, and that was, I don't know, it was such a great time to just seeing this many people that were just that passionate about how to optimize health and show up as our best form of ourselves. And
Yeah. It was a very good energy, I think, overall. It's just really, I mean, we met each other, just met a lot of good people, and just everyone was in, I don't know, it was a very good, warm energy to the event, I think. I highly recommend it to anyone who's in the space.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And when we met, hearing that you were talking breathwork, it's funny that we hadn't in 5 years done an episode focusing on this. And one of the key tenets for us is prevention over prescription. Like, we want to be able to manage our stress and our mindset and so forth within our own control. And there's nothing more I could think more aligned than breath work. So Vince, how did you get into this space in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I got into breathwork specifically. I actually, everything I'm doing now through a very tough period. It was a classic story. A lot of my clients are in similar situations when they come to me, but really heartbreak. It was a relationship ended and put me in a really, really dark place. It brought up a lot of stuff I hadn't faced in my life. I think I wasn't even aware was there, and it all just came crumbling down. And went through quite a long period, hit the bottom, and eventually found a set of tools, had some realizations, found a set of tools, and breathwork was a huge one of those tools. When I found it, I was in the right place at the right time, and it kind of really shifted things for me. So it was an amazing thing. And then I just started, I kind of was so passionate about it, I started talking to friends about it and doing things with friends, and then that sort of led to more formal stuff, and that led to everything I'm doing now. It's been quite an amazing journey, actually. I would never have predicted I'd be doing what I'm doing now, but it's sort of happened quite organically, and it's been amazing, and it's a really incredible practice.
Amazing. And what are the what are the typical conditions, or what are the typical clients or people that will come see you for breath work, whether it's anxiety, depression, whether it is to try and be more focused? Like, what is their typical client?
No. So I just preface this a bit by saying, obviously, breath work is sort of this huge field. It's like saying fitness, right? There's so many areas. It's really just breathing, which at its most basic is a very simple thing that we kind of take for granted. But once you start really playing with the breath and becoming aware of how powerful it is, you can do a lot with it, and you can shift your state quite substantially. So I would say there's two sort of broad schools. The one is very much performance, sort of almost sports based, and not necessarily only in the sports world, but it's performance, about breathing, regulating nervous system in real time. You can bring that into everyday life. Just people tend to be very locked up in their breathing. They tend to breathe very shallow. You'll notice that when you're stressed, if you kind of able to remember, you'll notice how tense you are and how much you're just in your chest. And for a lot of people, even just shifting that pattern and just getting back into their body and breathing deeper can kind of shift how they feel. So that's one side of sort of real-time regulation and breathing in a much healthier way, and then affecting your physical performance. The other side, which is much more where my work is on what's sort of called somatic breath work, or there's a lot of different words for it, but the style of breath work I do is called conscious connected breathing. It's rebirthing or holotropic breath work. There's all this sort of style of breathing. And what it really is much more about trauma processing. It's about processing stuff in the body. So it affects health from a kind of a whole different aspect of, we store a lot of stuff, and a lot of what the breathing does is allows you to release emotions that are stuck in the body, or kind of physical stuff that's stuck. So that's really where my focus is. And I work within a sort of broader coaching realm that I call performance coaching, which is really about getting people unstuck And so breathwork is this amazing tool of taking a lot of the mindset stuff I work with and really putting it in the body and getting people to kind of open up in the body and to let go of stuff that for some people they've been holding their entire life. And for a lot of us, we don't even know it's there.
I'd imagine a lot of people not knowing that it's there. So, like, how is that manifesting for a lot of the people you're working with? Is it pain? Is it just, or maybe it's chronic pain? Like, how does that look for a lot of people?
Yeah, it always manifests. I mean, that's the first thing I'll say. You're obviously would be no stranger to this. Like, you don't get to hide from stuff that you don't process, and it comes out both in the body. So people have physical symptoms. I mean, from the very basic of just like tension and stress and headaches and stuff that a lot of us just take for granted. You're like, oh, that's just the world I live in, the body I live in. And then on the flip side, it manifests kind of more maybe subtly in your life of just you tend to react very emotionally, relationships, the way you show up, a kind of feeling of being stuck, a feeling of kind of general anxiety. All of these things are all to do with the subconscious stuff we hold on to and that we haven't processed. And the more it's sort of shoved down, the more it's going to find ways to express. So both physically, which ultimately, if you hold on to the stuff long enough, becomes actual disease in some form because your body's just not vital, which again is in this whole functional kind of medicine world of really the mindset is such a huge part of it. And the way you feel about yourself is going to allow your body to heal itself. So for me, the physical side in terms from the health aspect is sort of a secondary to the mental side. Like, you can do all the physical stuff, but if you're still living in a state of chronic kind of stress and you're holding on to these things, you're not living in a vital state, your body's not operating at its full capacity. And that's where I go to, is much more the, what are the stories that are keeping you limited? And we all have them, right? We all have them. It's just, as you mentioned, it is subconscious for most of us, and we don't even know where we have them. We're just like, oh, I'm stressed. Or people come to me and they're like, I'm just an anxious person. Or my favorite, which I have a different view on, is like, oh, well, I'm just an A-type. You know, for me, I don't actually think that is a thing. I think that is just a heightened state. That's just a sort of cover up for a level of anxiety and fear that people live in that then they compensate by through performance. But it does manifest, yeah, and you don't escape it. And it can be a difficult process to face this stuff, but it's always the other side of that is a level of peace and downregulation and physical health that a lot of people don't think they're actually capable of. And it's pretty amazing to see when it does happen.
I could only imagine. And just to be clear, is it fair to say, Vince, like, this is not necessarily what the expression they use, it's not big T trauma necessarily, like that people don't need to have had this heavy traumatic episode to be able to benefit from some of this stuff. Like it could be quote unquote small T trauma. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, you're phrasing it perfectly. Because I use trauma very broadly as well, because I think here's a story I heard recently. I did an experiment. They had this like 6-month-old baby, and it was part of some broader thing, but he was being examined for whatever reason. I can't remember the background to it, but the general story were very loving parents, great environment. There was no trauma, nothing like that. But the parents happened to go away for 2 weeks, and this baby was under the care of someone who was doing some sort of study or something. Anyway, what they noticed was within a very short space of time, that baby, 6-month-old, kind of still very unaware, went through all the stages of a kind of traumatic event of acting out and crying and kind of then withdrawal and then ending up kind of going the back of its crib and just sort of withdrawing, stopping, screaming. The point being, it was just a lack of attention because the parents weren't there. Very loving parents, great environment. It was just sort of, so the point being that I think we underestimate how subtle trauma can be. It's just, it can be for all of us. We have a different sort of capacity and how we see things, and how trauma affects us. So great question. Yeah, it's absolutely not just physical T big trauma. It's the events of our life. The physical T big trauma can be incredibly, breathwork can be an amazing tool with it, but that needs to be done within the context of kind of integrating that and working through it. It's an amazing tool, but it can be. Have you gone through any sort of like big somatic breathwork experience?
Yeah, we hosted an event, a wellness event in the spring, and his name's Mark Jacobs, and we did a session, and like I was definitely emotional at the end of it. I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I did not expect that, and I'm still not sure exactly why, but but it was profound. The
Yeah.
feeling in the room
Yeah.
was was significant. Yeah, it was something.
Yeah. So you obviously have some context for it. A lot of people, especially now, breathworks are, I mean, it's becoming quite a lot more mainstream, but even when I started not that long ago, it was still kind of fairly new. So often I'll do big groups, and half the group, it'll be their first experience like that. And it's incredible to see, because people come in with certain expectations. And exactly as you've just articulated perfectly, it can be pretty surprising what comes up and what the experience is, because you just don't believe that breathing can take you to that place. And that emotion that we hold is like, where did that come from? And where it came from is sort of when your mom shouted at you when you're 4 years old, and you sort of buried that down in some way. You never thought about it again, but your body's held onto that memory in some way. And there's so much of that when we clear it, there's a sense of kind of space that we didn't realize was there. And it can be incredibly healing experiments. I've had people in sessions remember episodes of abuse that happened to them when they were children that they had no idea about, that the memories came through because their body was finally able to open up to them. I had someone recently who was a bit older, who just had a lot of tension in her life, and she kind of healed a shoulder injury because she'd just been holding this for so long. And she said for the first time in like 2 decades, it was the first time it kind of released there, because it was just, her body hadn't ever allowed to let go of that. So there can be some pretty incredible results with this stuff when your body's just able to feel safe, which is a lot of what the process is allowing you to kind of physically feel that sense of safety that a lot of us don't realize we aren't living in.
It makes sense, and I must say I've been a late bloomer when it came to the mind-body connection, but just through my own even personal journey after experiencing loss, I having these physical symptoms, and I talked to a bereavement expert, palliative care social worker. Shout out to Heather, and she was like, "This is very normal. After experiencing loss and normalizing it, just hearing that in and of itself was so healing." But
Yeah.
it's incredible the the impact that improving your mental side, how that can affect your physical health, and it's just one of those things you don't really hear about in medical school, but you see it enough times that you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, even when I got into this work more seriously, I wouldn't say I was a skeptic, but you hear all the big stories, right? Like sort of spontaneous recovery of things. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's in the sort of wellness space that's overplayed. But as you say, you see enough of it and you realize that actually things can change. Your body is incredibly intelligent, and it has a capacity to heal. And if we give it the space to do that, it does it. And I think you see that enough where when the body is able to feel safe, and when the mental side, when the stories that we live in that are very much for all of us as human beings by default based in some set of fears. We live in a set of sort of fears and inadequacies. So in some version, we have some version, all of us, that I am not good enough in some respect. And for many of us, we don't know exactly what that is because it's so deeply buried in our subconscious, but it is affecting our system. Because if you're not good enough and you live in some sense of fear, you're constantly in this sort of upregulated state where even if it's subtle, you're trying to kind of prove yourself, or you're trying to find some sense of safety or control, or kind of manipulate or change or yourself or the world around you because you want to feel safe. And that's always this upregulated state, and the feeling that most of us don't even realize we've never felt before. True safety, when we actually when you feel that, you realize that, oh, this is what I should be feeling, and that's true vitality, and that's true health, and then the body responds. And then I would imagine kind of all the medicine and the therapies are much more effective in that instance as well, because you're working with the body rather than against it.
Exactly. It's collaborative. It's like it's works in unison. So, Vince, what are some of the principles then when it comes to breath work? Like, is it in terms of trying to down regulate that nervous system? Because
Yeah,
I've seen a few things where you see the Wim Hof stuff where people are breathing quick or
yeah.
deeply for a prolonged period of time. I've I've seen stuff like the physiologic sigh, which I like to incorporate on a regular basis. But what's the kind of like high level principles where in terms of the technique to try and down regulate that nervous system?
Yeah, I mean, very broadly, high level, anything that is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale is going to upregulate. It's going to kind of increase heart rate and upregulate everything. So if you want to be energized, if you want something that's more about focus or getting into your day, it's a lot of sort of very sharp inhales and shorter exhales. Anything that is a longer exhale is down regulating. So there's common sort of things you've probably heard, things like box breathing, which is 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. That starts kind of getting the system more down regulated. And then if you use anything where it's a in breath and then you double the out breath. So if you breathe in for say 3 and you breathe out for 6, or you breathe in for 4 and you breathe out for 8, you'll notice your heart rate will noticeably slow down and you will downregulate. And so a lot of functional breathwork techniques, kind of day-to-day stuff, and a lot of breathwork, if you go on these apps and you get the practices, a lot of them are kind of, it's a merging of those sort of things. It's a playing around with those two principles of very aggressive, sharp inhales, which is very upregulating, or which is very downregulating. And so you can kind of play with those two. And honestly, what I work with a lot of people on in that instance is seeing what works for them. Because I think that we all have slightly different nervous systems and we all have different lung capacity. And for some, certain exercises work really well and others aren't work as well. But if you use those two broad principles and you experiment, that to me is the best way of finding something that works. Just to before I finish up on that point, my favorite breathwork practice, and the one I use so much, and it was kind of something that is the probably the easiest, is just what I call the triangle breath. And that's just a natural way of breathing. It's an in breath, an out breath, and then a pause. And just prefacing this by saying that most of us, our bodies are very, very good at breathing well. It's very good at regulating. If we just get out the way, it's incredibly good at keeping us calm and breathing well. The problem is we're able to override it, and our emotional state overrides it. So most of us, most of the time, especially if you live in big cities, I'm in New York, you're obviously in the work you're in, like you're quite active and upregulated and you're cutting your breath off. So a really good practice is to come back to the natural way of breathing up, just like a very, very gentle inhale, very gentle exhale, and then just pause at the bottom of the exhale and just wait for your body to take the next breath, which can be a bit weird because if you're thinking about it, you're already sort of overriding it a bit. But if you just play with that and you just notice, and it might be just a second, but you let your body take the next breath rather than forcing it, rather than rushing it. What you'll notice is if you play with that and just keep breathing, you do it throughout the day, really just walking down the street or anything, and really calming the breath. Even there's a principle, if you sort of put a feather under your nose, try not move the feather. It's like that calm. What you'll notice is it will calm you so much. You will immediately, there's this sense of almost euphoria you get where you realize that when your body's breathing properly, your nervous system just feels safe. And that's the simplest, most powerful practice I have.
Brilliant, and I like that because it's easy to follow, and it could be done anywhere. Whereas, like if you start doing some more upregulated breathing, you kind of, it's
Yeah,
hard
you can
not to
get a bit
notice.
weird.
And
Yeah.
so I really like that concept of just as you're walking, while you're waiting for coffee, while you're in the car, just adding that triangle breath. That's the first time I've actually heard of the triangle breath.
Yeah, just very gentle and breathe fully. A few sort of points, I suppose, for anyone that wants to try it. Breathe fully, like breathe into your body. So let it go into your diaphragm and your belly, and just, but very gentle. And then just really like notice that pause. And what you'll notice is your body will take the breath when it needs to. And it's not about holding your breath. It's very much it's make it comfortable. It's being in your body. And what even exercise like that does, even beyond the breathing, is just centers you back in the body. And what that does is slows the mind. So immediately, all the anxiety is all in the mind. It's all thinking, it's future and past, and we're not really present. And what doing something like that can do is obviously the physical side is physically regulating your heart rate and nervous system, but then it's also got this added benefit of actually just slowing down the mind, making you much more present, getting you back into the body, and the overall effect can be like really shift your state quite significantly. It can be really powerful.
The to me the joy is that how much you could transform your state in a relative short period of time. I'm curious to hear, Vince, like in your day to day, does this mean you're doing this every 30 minutes? You're doing this hour, or you're doing it first thing in the morning? Like, what's the practice look like for you that fully appreciates the value of breath work?
Yeah.
How does your day to day look like?
Yeah, I'll start by saying when I first got into breathwork, the practice I was doing a lot, and this thing that I teach, I say, is that somatic breathwork, where I was lying for an hour at a time and just breathing very intensely. But at the time, I was processing a lot of tough emotions and a lot of I was in not a great state. So that was sort of burning through that stuff. I do less of that now. I teach a lot of that and I'm involved in it a lot. I do those sessions once in a while, and they're still, every time, they're like these amazing moments, as you have experienced. But my day to day is often I'll generally wake up and I'll do a 5 minute breathing exercise. And if anyone's interested, there's a link to it on my YouTube. It has just a 5 minute, easy to follow. It's my favorite one. It's 50 breaths, so it's kind of a nice upregulating one. And I meditate, so it's a really good kind of puts you in a nice state to go into a meditation. It just kind of calms you and grounds you. But really, I would say the biggest thing for me is just awareness of my breath. I'm much, much more aware of, even in a conversation like this, I'm much more aware of like just taking a moment and kind of breathing out instead of being so upregulated. And so moment to moment, I find that is the most powerful thing, is just getting people aware of their breathing, because we forget about it. And as I've said, you end up then locking up, and then your body gets kind of quite heightened and you don't even realize you're doing it. So I would say I'm just every once in a while taking a conscious breath. Like, it's honestly that simple, and doing things like the triangle breathing. I do it so often now it becomes a little bit more kind of subconscious, as I'll be walking and I'll just be much more aware of how I'm breathing. And then there's a lot of great apps now. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. If anyone's interested, like, it's a really useful thing. There's 2 minute and 5 minute and 10 minute and 15 minute exercises that you can experiment with, and I often use them throughout the day when I'm like procrastinating, or I'm getting a bit kind of lethargic after lunch, of just going, and sometimes I'll just do like maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes of just a breathing style. And then at night, sometimes I'll do a kind of calming one, but that's making me sound like I'm a lot more diligent than I am. It's much more that morning practice. It's a couple of minutes, and then throughout the day, just being much more aware of breathing. And if anyone's listening, if there's one thing you take away, purely just being aware of your breath and just taking a conscious breath more regularly once in a while can be really profound.
I mean, I must say, even since learning about this stuff, you'll go through these stressful circumstances at work. Like, sometimes you'll go through a family meeting where you got to give bad news to a family, and I notice I'm very tense, like muscle tension like crazy, and then my breathing is super shallow, because then every once in a while you'll take a normal breath and you'll be like, oh, that felt amazing, and you realize how much you've been shallow breathing, and it's amazing how you could feel yourself relax so much more when you take that normal breath. Like for me, just making sure I take a full inhalation and a slow exhalation, just even a single one of those breaths during those stressful times, and it just recenters you, it grounds you, and you're ready to go again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. I mean, most of us breathe between 15 and 20 breaths per minute. Most people are in that range. So you're breathing at like 17 breaths per minute or whatever it is. A really good, if again in the sort of middle of the day or just walking down the street, is just to slow that rate down. So just slowing it down will again calm everything and just get you more conscious. And the sort of ideal length that people talk about, which again is a generalization, but is quite a useful one to play with, is 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And what that does is make a 10-second breath. So you move from, say, 15 breaths per minute or 17 breaths per minute to 6. So you can see how that just slows everything down. And that, so just like consciously 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, whenever you're feeling a little bit upregulated or stressful, just going back to that pattern can be really, really impactful. And it's so easy.
And in terms of like the how much this lasts, like would you say, I mean, maybe it's a bit of a difficult question to answer, but maybe if I reframe it, like if you're doing regular breath work, I'm thinking most of us that are listening to this have an upregulation problem, healthcare workers, people that are uh, have a certain level of anxiety in their line of work. Like, what? How long till you actually do you think till you feel a difference? That you're making a difference, or t- putting a dent in this in your overall health?
I mean, I'd like to say instantly if you shift your breathing patterns, because you're directly, there's a real time effect on your nervous system. So there's obviously that's not going to solve the kind of chronic underlying stuff if you're in a stressful line of work and there's stuff constantly. But I think shifting it moment to moment instead of maybe your kind of 80% of your day being an upregulated state, even if you bring that down to 60% of your day, you're already gaining quite a lot where your body gets to relax and recover in that state. What I will say is really the meat of my work. Breathwork's an incredible tool to kind of go a bit deeper on your question. The meat of my work addresses the mindset stuff. So it's as much about reframing how you gather that anxiety and where the mind is and what your own stories are that create that in the first place. And when you combine that with then being much more into your body and being able to regulate yourself in real time, that's when it becomes really powerful. And that's where it can have incredible kind of quite quick long-term change, because now you're aware of, oh, I'm anxious, but actually this has nothing to do with maybe the situation I'm currently facing, or maybe I'm in a kind of difficult situation at work. You realize that actually this is just me afraid of messing up because I don't want to disappoint my mom. And you start, whatever the story might be, if once you get to the heart of that stuff, you can start dissolving all of those things, and then you don't put the tension in the body in the first place because you're not in that fear state. And then you use the breath, because everyone's human beings and we have situations that are tense, but it becomes a much more powerful kind of tool alongside the mindset stuff. I would say on its own, it's very useful, but it is sort of limited as long as you're still living in a state of chronic tension and whatever that
Glad
might
you,
be for you.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, what you alluded to, even when you're saying in your somatic work, you want to get to the root cause, and if you are not doing the work to say where this anxiety is coming from, where the mindset concerns are coming from, I don't want to call it a band-aid, but it's just to a certain extent you're just masking the underlying concern. So yeah, doing that work to really say like what's underlying here.
Yeah.
Um, And
Yeah,
I'd
and they work.
imagine, Vince, that takes time. And I don't know, like
Well, it
that
can do.
sounds
I mean, they will also work hand in hand. It's really the sort of word I'd go to is safety. It's we all want a sense of safety. What anxiety is, what all these things are, is really we don't feel safe. And in some way, anxiety is very much, in some sense, I don't feel safe, so I'm looking to the future and trying to predict it and control it. So I'm always future focused, and I'm kind of projecting out all the scenarios that could go wrong in the future. If I inherently feel safe, I don't need to do that, and I can be okay with what is and just approach the moment as it is. So you approach that with the belief structure why you don't feel safe. And again, this is a very human thing. We all have some version of this until we become aware of it. But then you can start with the body if you can get yourself into a safe state. And this is what a lot of therapies can do, is like putting people in a state where they're able to examine difficult things because they physically feel safe enough to do it. And there's so I would say I would say it's less of a band-aid and more of a complementary thing. It's just not sufficient on its own. If you do go for one thing, addressing the mindset is always going to be the most powerful thing, because that's the kind of foundation. But you can use all the somatic work and the breath in particular to kind of get you into a state where, I feel like I can look at this stuff from a more safer kind of open perspective, rather than going into it where I feel tense and upregulated, and now it's hard to, it just sort of triggers me more and more and more. So definitely complementary.
Yeah, and I like how you put it. Like, you gotta have that lens of safety to be able to navigate through this, and um, however you could establish that, it's, it's paramount. I'm learning a lot here, Vince, and I'm feeling very motivated in terms of the work you're doing. Um, Anything else come to mind in terms of the work that you do that is helping so many people getting through that mindset and getting through the level of anxiety, etc.?
I mean, you mean in terms of what I do with people?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, what I do is at its core very simple, and it's just the subtlety is meeting people where they're at. So some people are very open and they're ready to face sort of things they need to face, and other people they're in capital T trauma, and you need to come in much more gently. In which case, somatic work can be very useful to just down-regulate everything before you're able to address it. But what I would say is at the core of it, it's very simple, is that like we all live in some form of constraint through a belief structure we have formed. And for all of us, this is just the nature of being human, we formed it as a kid, because that's when we formed our identity. That's when those belief structures formed. And we formed the belief structures because we thought we needed them to be safe. So we have some sort of version of based in insufficiency, that I see myself as something that is not quite good enough, because that's what I needed as a kid to find some sense of safety in a world where I thought the world needed me to be different from who I was. I'm being very broad with this. We all have flavors of this. But when you get to a stage as a sort of adult and you notice, actually, I'm feeling this limitation, I'm feeling stuckness, and that might be to a point where relationships are imploding, or careers imploding, or burnout happens, or the body starts collapsing, you get disease, then you get to look at those. Maybe you're forced to it through suffering. You get to look at it. And when you realize that you are creating all the tension and the suffering through this identity that you live in, that is based in actually a set of things that aren't actually true because you created them as a kid. Once you dissolve that, and it can be, as you say, I'm simplifying this hugely, but it is simple, it's just not necessarily easy. Once you dissolve that, what you realize, and this is, as I say, the simplicity at the core of what I do, is that your natural state is one of vitality and peace and joy. So it's not something you have to go and find. It's not a practice you have to maintain. It's not sort of out there and you grasp it and you might lose it. It is very much the core of who you are. The only thing getting in the way is you have a bunch of beliefs that are keeping you believing you're not there, and you have to go look for it. And so it's for me, that was an incredibly powerful thing when I realized it, because there's something very comforting in knowing that, like, even if I don't feel it, it's always available to me. That sense of peace and vitality and health and joy and love and possibility, that is our natural state as beings, that kind of live in these weird bodies that you obviously know a hell of a lot more about technically than I do. But like, we have these incredibly magnificent, complex machines we live in, but we have this mind that creates all these stories. And when we realize that actually our being beyond all those stories is one of vitality and love and joy, the practice becomes what is standing in the way of that and what can I dissolve, not how can I add to it and how can I find the next practice and the theory and information and keep adding to get to the next place. And that's just a different reframing of it. So it's quite liberating when you realize it's actually I can relax into what I am rather than I have to claw my way to it. And I think that can be very, very useful for some people to realize.
It's beautiful. Yeah, simplicity comes back to it. Like it doesn't have to be complex. You don't need to be, I don't know, using ultraviolet red light in a sauna upside down. It could just be and just distilling and just really getting back to who you really are. So Vince, this has been awesome. I'm feeling really inspired hearing this. Similar principles that we've always talked about, simple ways for folks to really improve on their overall wellness and their health. And you're doing this, and I know it's impacting so many people's lives in a positive way. How do people track you down?
Everything fans out from my Instagram. Honestly, that's the it's literally just my name, Vince Dickson, on Instagram, and it is there's some breathworks there. There's kind of everything I do is off there. So, and if people want to get hold of me, that's the best way to reach out. And I'm open. If anyone wants to find out about any of the practices or just has any questions, I love this. I love this stuff. So, anytime, anywhere.
Easy. And you're calling in from South Africa, my friend?
I'm in Cape Town right now, enjoying a bit of sunshine because it's snowing in New York, I see.
Yeah, it's apparently going to get a dump too. But Vince, thank you so much for joining us. This is special.
Yeah, dude, thank you so much. I'm really glad we chatted, yeah. And also I'll send some stuff for you to check out in terms of just your own kind of just simple little things you might enjoy.
I'm all up for it.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Vince.
Awesome, man. Yeah, great chat.